Look at the sheer scale of the Bhangarh Fort. Nestled deep within the Aravalli Hills, this vast expanse of stone and valley is entirely isolated. For centuries, it has held the undisputed title of India's most haunted location. Karan and Aditya entered these gates as professional skeptics. They were equipped with high-definition cameras and a singular goal: spend the night inside the ruins to prove that the terrifying folklore was a manufactured myth. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, an old watchman approached the pair. He issued two conditions: leave the grounds before absolute darkness, and if the sound of anklets rings out in the night, do not follow it. Karan and Aditya laughed off the advice, viewing it as a helpful atmospheric intro for their vlog. They made the conscious choice to let the heavy iron gates lock them inside the perimeter. By dismissing the watchman, they set up an experiment to see what happens when modern arrogance intentionally ignores ancient boundaries. For the first hour of absolute darkness, the ruins remained silent. Wandering through these dilapidated stone interiors and arched entryways, the only sounds were the wind and distant dogs barking in the distance. This quiet reinforced their overwhelming sense of safety. The silence broke with the distinct, rhythmic chiming of anklets echoing through the dark. It was localized and clearly approaching. In that moment, Karan's confidence vanished. A figure materialized in the distance, a girl in a long white dress. She stood perfectly still, unresponsive to their shouts, before drifting away into the deeper shadows of the ruins. They followed her toward this intricately carved temple, hoping for a confrontation. But by the time they reached the stone steps, the courtyard was empty. The girl had vanished into a dead end. This diagram shows the discrepancy between what the men saw and what the camera recorded. While their eyes perceived a figure walking toward the temple, the digital sensor registered nothing but empty space. The camera functioned perfectly. It recorded objective reality, confirming the entity they chased lacked a physical form. It was visible to the eye, yet entirely absent from the digital record. The haunting had transitioned from a psychological trick to a documented impossibility. Their skepticism was now replaced by the weight of physical evidence. Panic took over. They abandoned the chute and bolted into these maze-like stone pathways, desperate to reach the main gates. This top-down map plots their attempted escape. Despite sprinting in what they believed was a straight line toward the exit, the path unnaturally curved, looping them directly back to the same temple they had just fled. The sound of a woman crying led them to a ruined room with a half-broken door. When Aditya shined his torch inside, a pale face with entirely black eyes and a fixed smile materialized in the beam for a single second. They fled the room in a blind sprint, only to be halted by a silent horde. Over 20 figures in white stood in their path, heads bowed and completely motionless. When the figures raised their heads, the creators saw glowing red eyes without pupils. They scrambled up the stairs of the old palace, seeking the highest point of the ruins. From the roof, the scale of the trap became clear. Hundreds of silent figures now filled the courtyard below, all staring upward at the ledge, keeping the men pinned to the palace roof for the rest of the night. The fort uses these spatial distortions and overwhelming numbers to force its victims into a state of paralyzed vulnerability, making the possibility of escape feel like a distant memory. At the exact moment of sunrise, the paranormal activity ceased. The courtyard shown here returned to its daytime state, completely empty, as if the hundreds of figures from the night had never existed. They hurried through the main gates, where the watchman was waiting. He took one look at their faces and noted that very few people survive a full night within those walls. Traumatized, they returned home and waited days before they could bring themselves to review the night's surviving video files. The final recording provided the most chilling detail of the night. It shows Karan and Aditya on the roof, but standing directly behind them is a towering, pitch-black shadow entity that remained perfectly still for hours. Neither their eyes nor their instincts detected this presence. Throughout a night defined by overt terror, the primary threat remained completely unseen, watching them from inches away. Bhangarh's legends survive because of the entities that observe our hubris in silence. They serve as a reminder that some boundaries are built to keep us on the safe side of the gate.